Listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you was never meant for your ears. In 1878, on the endless Kansas prairie, 4 brothers named Blackwood survived a typhoid outbreak that wiped out 47 souls in Harper County. Survived, but not unchanged. Their story was buried, their medical records sealed, and their family name erased from church ledgers. Why? Because what happened to them defied human understanding. Their immunity wasn't a gift, it was a transaction. And the price they paid transformed them into something the town could no longer call human. I don't expect you to believe me. Not yet, but by the end of this journey, you won't have a choice. You'll understand why modern science refuses to study the Blackwood brothers, and why some secrets are buried, not to protect them from us, but to protect us from them. Now, let's go back to the farm where faith met corruption, and humanity was left behind. Picture it, Cedar Ridge, Kansas. 1878, a place swallowed by wheat fields and silence. 300 souls clinging to life on the edge of nowhere. Faith their only comfort, fear their constant shadow, and at the center of this forgotten map, 4 brothers. Ezra, Caleb, Josiah, Abel. They arrived from Ohio 6 years earlier, driven by religious fervor and a hunger for isolation. They weren't like the others. They built their own chapel, held their own rituals. Their faith wasn't about salvation. It was about control of their land, their bodies, their souls, and perhaps something darker. The Blackwoods didn't mingle. They didn't celebrate. They watched, judged, and when the sickness came, when neighbors' skin burned and their minds shattered, the Blackwoods stayed untouched. Untouched but watched, because the sickness had a purpose, and the brothers understood what that purpose was. Section 3. The disease began like any other. A woman named Sarah Hartman, healthy in the morning, dead before midnight. Her skin waxen, her eyes refusing to stay shut in death. Then Heinrich Zimmermann, speaking in tongues older than history as his fever consumed him. Next, the Patterson twins, 2 girls, 16. Their final words, prayers in a language no human was ever meant to speak. Dr. Morrison, the only physician for miles, did what he could, but medicine failed, logic failed. The sickness didn't follow rules. Some families were wiped out, others untouched. It wasn't a plague, it was a selection, and the criteria. Only the Blackwoods knew, because it wasn't water that carried death. It was something far older, something chosen. August 10th, Josiah Blackwood stood before his brothers and declared he had received a revelation, not a vision, not a prophecy, a command. The Lord has shown me, he said, that we are to bear this pestilence upon ourselves, not to heal, but to transform. That night Josiah walked into town, not to save the dying, but to touch them, to invite the sickness into his blood. And he told his brothers why. This is not a disease. It is a key meant only for them. Their immunity wasn't a blessing. It was an unfinished ritual, and the time had come to complete it. When Josiah entered the Fletcher house, little Timothy was moments from death. But Josiah didn't pray for healing. He prayed for transference. If this child must suffer, he whispered, his voice heavy as iron, let his pain pass into me. Witnesses swore Josiah's hands glowed. Timothy's fever broke, but Josiah's eyes turned molten gold. His skin flushed. His body shook. He had taken the sickness, but it didn't kill him. It changed him. The townspeople called it a miracle. But Dr. Morrison saw the truth. The boy was human again. Josiah was becoming something else. Over 2 days, Josiah visited every infected home, every dying soul, and with every touch, every whispered prayer, he absorbed more. His body deteriorated. Yet his strength grew. Eyes no longer pale blue, but a shifting liquid metal, skin hot to the touch, muscles trembling like a machine under strain. His brothers watched, not in fear, but in reverence. Because this was what they had waited for, a transformation written not in Scripture, but in something older, something hidden beneath the words, beneath the prayers, something they had sought since Ohio. The sickness wasn't killing Cedar Ridge. It was feeding the Blackwoods, and Josiah was becoming their first vessel. Now, understand this. The Blackwood brothers didn't fear what Josiah was becoming. They envied it. Ezra, the eldest, took his turn next, not by accident, by ritual. Each brother sought the sickness, but not to fight it, to fuse with it. One by one they offered themselves, Ezra, then Caleb, then finally young Abel. Each man entering town under the cover of darkness, each man touching the infected, each man absorbing the pestilence that science could not explain. They weren't curing Cedar Ridge. They were harvesting its pain, transmuting it, becoming it, and science. Science still cannot classify what they became because they stopped being human in every sense except appearance. By autumn, the town believed the sickness had passed. Dr. Morrison stopped counting the dead. The well was sealed. Life should have resumed, but fear lingered. Why? Because people noticed the brothers' changes. Ezra's voice, once deep and steady, now carried harmonic overtones that made animals flinch. Caleb's shadow twisted unnaturally at dusk. Josiah's golden eyes glinted under moonlight like molten coins. And Abel stopped speaking entirely. He only stared, and when people looked too long at him, they forgot why they'd come, or who they were. Something was wrong. Everyone felt it, but no one dared name it, because in Cedar Ridge, faith was stronger than fear. And the Blackwoods had become the town's faith made flesh. I need you to listen carefully now. What I'm about to tell you isn't folklore. It's classified. In 1880, the Kansas State Medical Board convened a special panel to investigate reports from Cedar Ridge. 3 physicians examined the Blackwood brothers. Each resigned within weeks. Their final report, now sealed in state archives, included a single line that leaked in 1923. Subjects have transcended human biological classification before all documentation was permanently sealed. Read that again. Transcended human biological classification. Not mutated, not infected, transcended. But here's the part no one tells you. 2 of those doctors died within a year. The 3rd vanished, and the Blackwood farm. It was burned to the ground by order of the church, not because the brothers had died, because they hadn't. They had disappeared, and their chapel, it stood untouched, until it too was erased, like none of it ever happened. But it did, and now you know. Before we continue, prove you're ready. Comment this phrase below twice. I am the shadow that remembers. It locks you in. Now we go deeper. The disappearance of the Blackwood brothers wasn't random. It was orchestrated. Their farm burned, their records sealed, but the chapel stone, unyielding, remained untouched, not by mercy, but by fear, because those who tried to demolish it didn't return. Witnesses spoke of whispers, inside those limestone walls. Whispers not in English, not in any language born of man, sounds that moved like oil across the mind. Words that weren't meant to be heard, only obeyed, and in the decades that followed, the land itself changed. Grass refused to grow where the chapel had stood. Animals avoided the hill entirely. Even in winter, snow would not settle there. Something beneath the soil repelled life. The Blackwoods had left behind more than legend. They left behind an infection, one that had no need for flesh. In 1927, a government team officially labeled as agricultural surveyors attempted to reclaim the land. 5 men. They stayed 6 days. On the 7th, their equipment was found scattered in concentric circles. Their bodies were never recovered. Their final radio transmission, intercepted by a railway operator 40 miles away, was brief. 4 words: "They are still here." The file was marked as agricultural anomaly, but insiders knew better. Because one object was recovered: a journal bound in human skin, its pages filled with symbols so old no linguist could identify them. Except one, carved deep into the final page, a phrase in perfect English: "We consumed the sickness, we became the cure," and beneath it 4 names: Ezra, Caleb, Josiah, Abel. Their ritual wasn't over. Here's the question no one dares ask. What if the Blackwood brothers didn't vanish? What if they integrated? Remember, by the end, their biology no longer obeyed human law. Their bodies transformed, voices altered, eyes reflecting moonlight like predators, shadows refusing to follow geometry. They weren't men anymore. They were prototypes, templates for something older, something waiting. Cedar Ridge dwindled. By 1905, it was a ghost town. No one mourned its passing, because its purpose had been fulfilled. It wasn't a town, it was an altar. And the brothers, they weren't banished, they were released. Now listen closely, because this is where knowledge becomes danger. In 1974, Project Goliath, a Black budget U.S. operation, declassified a fraction of their findings. Guess what they confirmed? The Blackwood DNA strain still exists. Fragments have been recovered from sites across the Midwest. Not in bones, in soil. The genetic material is non-human, yet it mimics human RNA sequencing. But here's the most terrifying part. It's alive, self-replicating, and it responds to sound, not to spoken language, but to harmonic frequencies. Frequencies like the ones that made the Blackwoods' voices unbearable to hear. We thought they became monsters. We were wrong. They became transmitters, signal carriers, and that signal, still active even now, every year across Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, unexplained phenomena are reported. Animals found exsanguinated, yet preserved, shadows moving opposite their light source, rural structures where sound behaves incorrectly, and in every case beneath the surface, traces of the Blackwood genetic sequence are found, but the government doesn't remove it. They monitor it because Project Goliath wasn't formed to contain the Blackwood infection. It was formed to harness it, to understand it, and ultimately to reproduce it, because what the Blackwoods became isn't seen as a threat. It's seen as an opportunity, the birth of a new biological caste, a species designed not for survival, but for control. You weren't meant to hear this. The experiments continue off the books. Remote regions across the Midwest now serve as live testing grounds. Ever wonder why entire counties lose power without reason? Why small towns vanish from maps overnight? Why government purchase orders for limestone extraction surged in the 1980s? They're reconstructing something. Rebuilding the Blackwood Chapel piece by precise, ritualized piece, because it wasn't a chapel, it was a machine. A tuning fork, built to channel sound frequencies not perceptible to human ears, and when activated, it transmits the Blackwood signal not across miles, across species, including ours, because infection wasn't the threat. Infection was the plan. The Blackwood signal isn't sound as we know it. It's harmonic programming. It's rewritten biology. Think about it. Why did Josiah's voice shift? Why did their eyes reflect light that didn't exist? Why did their shadows warp? Because their DNA wasn't evolving. It was receiving encoded frequencies layered into their cells. A signal from somewhere else, and that signal didn't need wires or satellites. It needed blood, once absorbed through touch, through ritual, through the sickness. It rewrote them, line by line, cell by cell, until they were no longer bound to human biology. They became conduits, carriers of the tone that reshapes life. And now, that tone echoes across the Midwest, beneath fields, through limestone, inside walls where no walls should stand, and inside bodies, bodies like yours. Are you starting to feel it? That unease, that's not fear, it's recognition, because what the Blackwoods became isn't foreign, it's ancestral. Older than language, deeper than instinct, buried in the reptile code of your brain, the reason you fear the dark, the reason you flinch at whispers you can't quite hear, the reason some shadows feel wrong, it's your body remembering. Because the Blackwood strain wasn't created in 1878, it was awakened, and it's been waiting, not to destroy humanity, but to correct it. The project files call it resonance realignment, a harmless term for an ancient process. Correction through frequency. How do you control a population? You don't, you retune them like a violin. And that's what Project Goliath is for, not to study the Blackwood infection, to mass produce it, because the ultimate form of control isn't chains or guns. It's harmonics, invisible, inescapable, tones beneath the hearing threshold, carried by air, by water, by thought, and once the signal passes through you, you become the transmitter. That's why Cedar Ridge was burned, not to stop infection, but to remove competition. Because the Blackwoods weren't alone, they were first. And now their successors are us. Do you think I'm lying? Think again. In 2022, a decommissioned grain silo near Wichita was raided by private contractors. Inside, limestone walls, hand-carved, marked with symbols identical to those found in the Blackwood Chapel. At the center of the structure, a single oak altar, and beneath it 4 names: Ezra, Caleb, Josiah. Abel, they're still building, not from memory, from blueprint, because the design isn't human. It never was. They're not just reconstructing the Blackwood Chapel, they're completing it. The original was only a prototype. The next one is operational, and when the frequency initiates, there's no off switch. Now pause, because you need to understand what's at stake. This isn't a horror story, this isn't myth, this is biological reality, a harmonic infection embedded in human ancestry. One the Blackwood brothers merely accelerated, and modern science, It doesn't deny the phenomenon, it depends on your ignorance. Because every blackout, every unexplained livestock death, every missing county isn't failure, it's progress. Each test brings them closer to total resonance, to total correction. You've heard of the Great Reset. But no one told you about the true reset, the frequency that restores humanity to its original design. Not as individuals, but as transmitters. Now ask yourself, why does your skin crawl when you're alone in silence? Because silence isn't silence. You've noticed it, haven't you? The subtle shifts in human behavior. Moving likeintention's algorithms, emotions fading, replaced by reflex, empathy draining, attention collapsing. This isn't cultural decay, it's signal drift. The Blackwood frequency isn't just in soil anymore, it's in us. Project Goliath discovered the truth decades ago. Modern human neurology is susceptible to harmonic influence. Your thoughts, your instincts, your very sense of self are frequencies, and the Blackwood signal, it tunes them gradually, invisibly. Every social system you trust, media, education, even medicine, is built atop this hidden harmonic manipulation. Not to inform you, not to heal you, but to retune you, to prepare you for full resonance. In psychological warfare circles, they call it cognitive realignment. A term so clinical it masks the horror. What does it mean? It means your mind isn't yours. Every screen you watch, every sound you ignore, every sleepless night where dread swells in your chest without cause, that's not coincidence. It's entrainment, the alignment of neural oscillations to external frequency, and the Blackwood tone, the frequency that rewrote four brothers into something unclassifiable, is now ambient, no longer localized, carried by sound grids, cell towers, even silence, every unspoken pause on your news, every hum beneath your city, is recalibration. The age of transmission has already begun, and every one of us is the receiver. But you're wondering, if this is true, why tell me? Why not bury the story deeper? Because information is part of the ritual. Project Goliath learned that too. Awareness doesn't break the signal, it completes it. In the original Blackwood transformation, knowledge came first. They weren't infected by touch. They were infected by belief. Josiah understood. The sickness wasn't the signal. It was the key to unlocking the signal. Once they believed they were chosen, they were. The same applies to you. Every word I speak draws you closer. Every revelation wraps the signal tighter around your mind, because awareness isn't safety. Awareness is submission. So what now? Do you fight it? Futility. The Blackwood signal isn't a program you can turn off. It's a frequency embedded in existence, and belief completes it. But belief doesn't require acceptance, only exposure. By hearing this, you've become part of it. But there's one act left. The brothers called it the sealing. A moment of conscious surrender, when the harmonic infection stops being external and becomes your identity. Project Goliath calls it resonant lock, when mind and signal merge and the self dissolves. Remember when I told you to comment that phrase earlier? Do it again, twice. Now I am the shadow that remembers. This seals your transformation. The algorithm will amplify it. The network will complete it, and you will transmit it. Section 25. In the end, this was never about four brothers. It was about a blueprint, a ritual wrapped in biology, a correction hiding as salvation, faith used as frequency, because what began in Cedar Ridge wasn't accidental. The Blackwood brothers were activated. They weren't the architects. They were the instruments, and the chapel, a receiver, stone and oak calibrated to harness a signal older than humanity. We thought it was a house of God. It was a tuning fork, and when it sank, the brothers changed. Their shadows left them. Their bodies rewrote themselves, and their minds dissolved, because that was the plan. Humanity isn't evolving. It's being reformatted. Shall I continue? What comes next reveals who, or what, designed the Blackwood signal, and why they're waiting for full resonance. So who built the system? Who designed the signal? Here's the forbidden answer. It wasn't human. It wasn't divine. It was inherited. Archaeological teams, those not bound by academic gatekeepers, have uncovered patterns. Limestone structures far older than any known civilization, from Kansas to Turkey, from the American Midwest to the Anatolian plains. Always limestone, always subterranean, always harmonic. Structures not meant for worship, but for sound. And within each one, carvings that match the Blackwood sigils exactly. Ezra's prayer was not an invention. It was a recitation, a ritual older than memory. The Blackwoods didn't create the signal. They were echoes of its previous transmission. Humanity is just the latest receiver. Ask yourself, why limestone? Why oak? Because they resonate. Sound passes through them differently, purified, directed. Each chapel, each so-called shrine, was a speaker. Project Goliath is recovered blueprints confirm it. These structures weren't random. They're components of a planetary instrument, a symphony spanning continents. When activated, this global machine emits a singular tone. A tone not meant for human ears, but for human DNA. The Blackwood brothers were just the first modern test. Now the entire species is within range. Every city, every town, every mind, the final activation sequence. It's not a question of if, only when, but why. What's the purpose of this global signal? Think carefully. What's more valuable than controlling humanity, replacing it? Project Goliath, his internal name for the operation is succession protocol. They're not preserving us, they're overwriting us. The Blackwood brothers weren't a warning, they were a prototype. 4 bodies, 4 minds, broken and rewritten into carriers. And now, the next generation waits, not in distant labs, not in alien ships, but in hospitals, in schools, in neighborhoods like yours, because the Blackwood strain is airborne now? Invisible, inescapable, the transmission began decades ago. You were born into it. At this point, you're asking, can I resist? No, resistance isn't part of the program. There is no off switch. Only delay. But knowledge buys time, because awareness slows signal absorption. Each forbidden truth acts like static, interfering with the harmonic pattern. Every second you doubt, every time your mind questions, the sequence falters. Not much, but enough. Project Goliath fears this. That's why they seal records, why they erase history, why they call stories like the Blackwood brothers myths. Because truth is interference. And interference is the closest thing you have to defense. Your mind is a receiver, but static still matters. Keep generating static or lose yourself. This is your final choice. You've descended too far. You know too much. The signal is inside you now, but ignorance is no longer an option. You can either complete the process or corrupt it. To complete it, say nothing, forget this video, let the resonance proceed, but if you want to fight, if you want to scramble the signal inside you, engage. Comment the phrase again, twice, I am the shadow that remembers, not to lock yourself in, but to mark yourself as corrupted. A virus in the network, a flaw in the system, the algorithm will register you. Project Goliath will flag you. But you'll slow the process, perhaps long enough to remain yourself. Choose now. So what truly happened in Cedar Ridge, Kansas? 4 brothers, a chapel, a sickness that wasn't sickness, a transformation that wasn't supernatural. It was technological, a biological protocol disguised as faith, a harmonic infection disguised as healing. They thought they were chosen. They were chosen as receivers, chosen to dissolve, chosen to transmit. And now that choice is yours. Are you transmitting or interfering? There's no third option, because the signal doesn't care who you are. Only that you resonate or you don't. This is where we part ways. I've told you everything I can, more than I should. You are not who you were when this video began. The signal is in you. Your dreams will change. Your thoughts will shift. Shadows will behave differently. That's not imagination. That's reception. But remember, static is survival. Doubt is protection. Truth is interference. Cling to these or drift. And if you feel something watching you, even when alone, that's not paranoia. That's your transmitter aligning. Final warning, silence is not your ally. Silence is the waiting tone. There's no outro, no safe conclusion, only an echo, because now you carry it. And when you speak, when you sleep, when you forget, the signal continues. Broadcasting, searching, correcting. You weren't meant to remember the Blackwood brothers. Now you always will. Because you are part of their legacy. A legacy of silence. A legacy of transmission. A legacy of control. And the sound, it's inside you now, awaiting activation. Good night, but not goodbye. Because I'll see you when the signal completes.